Get real, child. Let's get real.
My name's Matt Hamilton. I grew up north of Durant, Oklahoma. We've been there ever since the United States federal government was nice enough to relocate us there from Georgia in 1853. So we're still there on land our Choctaw families placed on back in the mid-1800s. I grew up in a farming and ranching family, so traditional southern Oklahoma agriculture, cow-calf operation. We farm peanuts, local, your typical row crops, peanut and cotton in that area. But what really Hamilton family is involved in there is agribusiness. So we're your local hometown feed, seed, chemical fertilizer dealer, peanut dryer. We had a cotton gin. So we were involved in commercial agriculture as much or more than production. But definitely growing up in production agriculture and in commercial agriculture, which is a very different world. It's kind of like being in the building the car business versus the selling the car business. I didn't know much about North Texas, but I graduated from Oklahoma State with an agriculture economics degree in 1998, and I remember one thing on a special project. They said there were about 600,000 people living in Collin County, and that wasn't very far from me, and those 600,000 people had more disposable income than the 3 million people who lived in Oklahoma. So I remembered that, so I came down here to make a living in this economy, left agriculture from 2002 until 2009, seeking to get back into ranching for profit, this very novel idea that hasn't been accomplished in this country since about 1885. So trying to get back to ranching for profit by becoming vertically integrated. There was a large push towards buying locally, buying in farmers markets, buying grass-fed, steroid-free, hormone-free, antibiotic-free local beef. So we opened the butcher shop in 2010. We brought in a lot of other products as well as the beef we were producing. Everything's local and I'm the yokel. That's kind of the joke over at the local yokel. We opened a butcher shop. So what you do is you figure it out. So your first thing you do is you produce some okay beef, and then you will probably honestly produce some really sorry beef, and then produce a little bit better, and then produce a little bit better. So along the way, at first I was raising all the cattle and hauling the cattle alive, hauling the carcasses, and doing a big part of the butchering. So all right, so then as we grew, you can't do it all. So as the business grew from one part-time employee to 12, 14 full-time employees, I was stretched pretty thin, and my model for grass finishing cattle was I had producers that I was buying their yearling weaned steers and grass finishing them there in Oklahoma. A drought came along, not very long after we had the butcher shop open, and these guys all liquidated their cow herds, and that kind of left me wondering where my future was. I had cattle in the pipeline, but there was a horizon point where I was going to run out of beef. And a guy shows up in a Suburban and he says he's got some local grass-fed beef. And I've heard people bring me stuff all the time. And he said, man, I'm producing some pretty decent marbled beef. And he showed up kind of the end of the day, and we're going to dinner at a restaurant I was selling grass-fed burgers to. So he had some steaks, vacuum sealed from a processor, and they were pretty good. They looked pretty decent. They were probably better than the steaks that I had in the counter at the time because I was just spread so thin. So that's when I first met David Munson, and we looked at some steaks that he had in a cooler in the back of the Suburban, and we walked over and had one of my burgers at a restaurant around the corner from the butcher shop that I was selling meat to at the time, and started down a road of buying cattle from David off his ranch there on the Red River, to getting to know David over the years and then developing a business partnership with David on the cattle side. So a question you had for me is, what does sustainability look like in local beef production? So I get asked a lot, well, what does sustainable mean? What does sustainable mean? The first thing that sustainable has to be is profitable. Because if you're not profitable, you're not sustainable. So no matter what else you're doing, if it's not profitable, it's not sustainable. Of course, there's agriculture. The government loves to influence agriculture and put some money here, put some money there. And I'm not talking about that type of profitability, sustainability, real sustainability. So real sustainability is producing a product that's a quality product that the consumer desires and producing it in a way that is profitable to the rancher, profitable to the processor, profitable to the retailer, but affordable to the consumer. So there's a lot of efficiencies that the big guys have. So when you're running these large plants that have 4,000 to 8,000 head per day per plant capacity, there are efficiencies there that we don't have. When you're trucking cattle 40 head in a semi versus 2 or 3 head at a time, there's efficiencies there. To be sustainable on local, grass-based, whether that is traditional grass-fed where the cattle consume the product off of the field, or whether that's David's process for harvesting these grasses and drying them and feeding them to the cattle. But a forage-based, locally produced product to be sustainable has to have efficiencies. So we have to meet all those markers along the way to do that. So it's been pretty interesting to see his progression into this focus on carbon sequestration and the work he's done on remineralization to up carbon sequestration. Wherever you're at, on whichever side of this you're on, there's a great opportunity, no matter what your viewpoint is. I'm for things that support local agriculture and can be profitable and beneficial to farmers and ranchers. And a system, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on, we agree we need to put some carbon back in the ground. We know we're taking carbon out of the ground, we're putting it in the air. All the data here, that you're not here to argue the data points of how much where. We know we need to put carbon back in the ground. The earth does that. It does it more efficiently when the soil is healthy. So we're getting soils healthy and upping production and producing more food in this country, for this country. And if we have farmers Michael Martin Murphy said the Cowboys are going to save the world again. They're just going to do it through carbon sequestration this time. So the Cowboys are the heroes again. And the financial benefit that this could provide farmers and ranchers who just do not get paid adequately for their production. Not everyone is called to have a butcher shop and a restaurant and to do this. I really just want to go ranch. I just want to go raise cattle. And I thought I could raise cattle and come to town one day a week and sell beef. And God had a different plan for me. So there's always a crisis. There's a crisis. We're talking about the climate is a crisis. Well, there's a crisis coming whose term date is a whole lot sooner than any climate crisis that there could be. And that is your food supply. Because the average age of the American farmer and rancher is getting older and older and older. They used to be in their 50s, then they were in their 60s. Now they're average in their 70s. And when the average age of the guy producing your food is starting to exceed the average age of life expectancy of your country, I don't know what you call that, but I think it's a crisis. So, my granddad bought that tractor brand new. 1949. You could make a living farming and ranching in 1949. You buy a Ford tractor, right? Pay cash for it. He was not an educated man, but he was a smart man. And he's able to raise his family on a farm, on a ranch. Had a good quality life. And a young man today can't do that. He cannot do that. Unless he inherited millions of dollars, he cannot make enough money to raise his family on a small farm and ranch. You have to be a huge operator. You have to have millions of dollars of equipment. You have to have $30, $40 million in land, at least $2 or $3, $4 million in land. You can't start out. You can't come out of the Great Depression with no money. You can't build up. You can't increase your assets, right? So there's I want people to have opportunity to raise their families.
Get